looks like we're having some trouble. We have audio troubles today, people. Audio troubles on Behind the Lens. We've got crackles in our master box. And Pam was going to bring up something and it didn't come up. So never mind, Pam. Just we're just having so much fun here already. This is what happens after you take a week off, and it was a holiday last week for Memorial Day. But we move on. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens. And you can find my movie reviews and interviews 24/7 in print and online around the globe. And, of course, on behindthelensonline.net. But every Monday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, I am right here on adrenalineradio.com. And hey, if you're listening right now, you can also go to the adrenalineradio.com Facebook page and you can watch the Facebook live stream. Not that exciting, but for the fact that you get to see all the really cool Han Solo and Avengers merchandise that is decorating my tablescape again this week. And for those of you that have not yet seen Han Solo, I've been chanting this for almost a month now. See it, see it, see it. See it. The naysayers about, the box office. The movie broke $100 million opening weekend. That is nothing to sneeze at. But the film is so good. Ron Howard does such an incredible job. And to watch the foundation of what we came to know and love about Harrison Ford's Han Solo and Chewbacca, to see that in its infancy and start in Solo, a Star Wars story, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. Alden Ehrenreich and Donald Glover are impeccable as Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. So do yourself a favor. The holiday box office from last week has died down. Theaters are a little bit thinner out there. So go during the daytime, relax, and enjoy yourself and see the incredible Solo, a Star Wars story. But for all of you who want to just sit at home and see something, now on digital and on DVD, Blu-ray tomorrow is A Wrinkle in Time. As many of our regular listeners know, I was beyond excited with anticipation waiting for A Wrinkle in Time when it hit movie theaters. It is my all-time favorite book by Madeleine L'Engle. And with the theatrical release of the film, the book actually shot to the #1 bestseller slot after decades since its original release. The movie, it is a visual wonder. It is visual splendor. I'm very thrilled for the home video release. I had a chance to speak with Storm Reed, who plays Meg Murray, and Derek McCabe, who plays Meg's younger brother, Charles Wallace. It is their story that is the heart and soul of A Wrinkle in Time. But in addition to speaking with them, I got to sit down for a one-on-one with one of the producers, Catherine Hand. Catherine has, like myself, has loved this book since the first time she read it in 1963. I admit to all, I have read that book at least once a year, every year, since I was in second grade. So that's been for 52 years. And so to get to sit down and speak with somebody whose love and passion for the book equaled my own, and even surpassed mine, given that she plodded on since 1979 to get this movie made. This has been her baby. She has spearheaded this, gone through many iterations and incarnations before landing on the doorstep, ultimately, of Disney. So take a listen. But before we do that, I should tell you who's coming up on the show. See, Pam, audio stuff at the top of the show just screwed me up. At the quarter-hour mark, we have director Adam Sobel joining us to talk about his new documentary, The Workers' Cup. Adam is well known as a television and journalism producer covering the Middle East for outlets such as CNN, BBC, HBO, The Guardian. And this is quite an interesting story that centers around the World Cup, which will take place in Qatar in 2022. But We also then have, at the half-hour mark, I'm so excited, one of my filmmaker friends, David Palomaro, is back. It's been a few years since David had a film. The last one he did was In Heaven There Is No Beer, a great documentary. Now he's back with a narrative that's kind of an Agatha Christie Hitchcock crossover. Murder Made Easy, that's going to be screening at the Dances with Films Film Festival next week in Los Angeles. So I'm so thrilled to have David here. This is a whole new genre for him to explore as a director and also as co-editor. So I can't wait to talk to David about this. But right now, before both of our special guests today, let's take a listen to my interview with Catherine Hand as we talk about A Wrinkle in Time.
I am so thrilled that you brought this. I waited my whole life for this. Like you, the TV version, I was so excited, and then I watched it.
Let me just tell you.
And
yeah, I know.
You know, how challenging has it been over the years? Because this is not the kind of film. It wasn't classified It wasn't classified as a young adult. It had a sci-fi. You know, it was classified so many different things by librarians. So I'm curious, in the film market, over your journey in bringing this to life, what were some of the hurdles that you had to overcome before you had anybody in the predominantly male-dominated banking part of the financing part of this to say, yeah, there's something here?
You know, I think the very first hurdle I had to overcome in all of this is to accept that it was going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. You know, I loved it. I thought it was going to be just a fantastic movie, and I had no idea that other people saw it differently than I did. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that it was a male-dominated, you know. I mean, I didn't think about that, right. You know. I just knew how I felt after I read it, which was I felt so good, and I wanted to read it again. And so, you know, in my mind, if you're going to spend the time and energy trying to bring something to the screen, little screen, big screen, streaming screen, whatever, it's because you want to spend your time doing it, and you think at the end of the day, people are going to feel better, you know, that you're going to add to their life. And I really felt that about A Wrinkle in Time. I thought it was exactly what I've said. I think it illuminates the human spirit. And I did read somewhere where someone said it's a roadmap of sorts to be a good person. Mm-hmm. How many? There are not that many projects out there to do that. So the very first time we worked with a screenwriter, I was taken aback that it wasn't good. The screenplay didn't work. And I didn't realize then, I mean, I did over the years, how people saw that book so differently depending on the time of their life when they're reading it, what's going on in their life when they're reading it. And it became like herding cats. Every time I would have a conversation, really with anyone, that the dark thing was different to everybody, the ladies were different, spirituality, some people loved the spirituality, some people said you had to get rid of it. People would say you got to get rid of happy medium, you got to condense the three ladies into one, you got to lose Calvin and Charles Wallace, and it only should be about Meg. I mean, I just went through so many conversations. I think the thing that really always got me was when I would be in conversations with folks who just thought the book didn't work. And I would think, it won the Newbery Award, and it has lasted, at that time, it's beloved for 35 years, and you don't think it works. I could not understand that. And slowly but surely, I also found that I would run into the exact same issues that Madeline faced trying to get it published.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what audience is this for? You know, it's too dark or too smart for kids. Adults won't like it. I mean, just all these different things. And so it was shocking to me that it was difficult. And then, of course, I got even more determined to not give up.
Shall we say like our heroine in the
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah. Do you see yourself taking another journey, moving into Swiftly Tilting Planet, or?
Well, unfortunately, that's not up to me. That's up to Disney. You know, I wish that they would wish to make the sequels, and maybe your audience will, write letters. Let's do Wind in the Door and Swiftly Tilting Planet. I think they could be great movies. Mm-hmm. Maybe even for Disney's streaming service, but that's really up to Disney.
Yeah. When did you finally make that leap to Disney with this film? I mean, you have a pedigree. Norman Lear, come on. But working with Norman Lear in television is a whole lot different than feature film. And then finally, you get that nibble, you get that interest, and then you end up on Bob Iger's door.
So, okay. The truth behind the scenes, truth of that, is that when I made the deal with Miramax to do the TV version, when I made the original deal with Miramax, it was not as a TV, it was as a feature film. And I remember having a conversation with Bob Weinstein at the time, like, how can this little little independent film company afford to make A Wrinkle in Time? And he said not to worry, he's going to find the money, he had to have it, he has to make this movie. And he was incredibly emphatic. He was just, he clearly loved A Wrinkle in Time. 2 months after I signed the deal with Miramax, Disney bought Miramax. So after the TV version was made, and I was disappointed, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make a remake happen, the day that Miramax and Disney got a divorce, I went knocking on the door then of Dick Cook, who was the chairman of Disney, and I said, in the divorce, please take A Wrinkle in Time. And that was the moment that it became a Disney project.
Wow. That's the kind of stuff that Disney stories are made of.
Yeah, right. And then the other thing was, I think there are probably plenty of executives, they know who they are, that wished I had gone away because I just would not. I just kept sending emails, I kept making phone calls, And, really everything turned around when Tendon Agenda said, I really think we should give this a shot. And then Jim Whittaker had also really liked A Wrinkle in Time, and he had talked to Disney, and Tendo said, I think I have someone you need to meet. And then Jim and I met, and then not too long after, maybe 6 months, 7 months, we heard that it was Jennifer Lee's favorite childhood book. And
of course.
Yeah, right? And so I think for me, everything changed the moment I met Jennifer Lee. I just felt that she was a young Madeleine L'Engle, that she understood. Not only did she understand the book and love it from a child's point of view like I did, but she studied physics. That was her major in college. So here was this brilliant writer who understands joy and love and what it is to feel fearful, to become fearless. She understood that. And
but she also understood the science behind
and she did
and the tesser
all of it, and she knew how to write about it, and it was really, really wonderful. And then when Ava joined the team, it then became a movie. Right. All up until it was all hope, and it was all like, let's do this or whatever. Ava joined. Now we had our director. Now we had a movie, and so that was the real turning point.
I'm curious, because you have been on this journey, you've been in this business, you've seen so many aspects and facets, jumped so many hurdles. Now that the film has been made, it's been out there, it's now going to DVD and Blu-ray, and yes, I'm so happy Aunt Beast is an added deleted scene extra on the DVD. I'm curious what you personally have taken away from this journey of getting this film made that you now will take forward into your future projects.
Whoa, that's a really good question with many answers. But I will say one thing that I did not see in the beginning of this that I do now. One of the things that Madeline L'Engle did was that she created really a mythic adventure from a young girl's point of view. And that the great gift she gave us was the journey itself. Because going on the journey is how you only know who you are, and you only know what your talents are when you are tested, when you are given a task or a mission, and you have to see it through. And that is what happens for Meg. I think that's what a lot of young people, I don't think just young girls, young boys too, because Charles Wallace and Calvin are also on a similar adventure, just not as central focused as Meg. Mm-hmm. But it's the journey and being tested to discover who you are. And I think for me, it was the journey of trying to get this movie made that being tested as much as I have been really helped me to learn how to tesser well.
And that was producer Catherine Hand of A Wrinkle in Time. And for all of you filmmakers out there who were just listening to what Catherine had to say, I have to tell you, this is what determination and fortitude can do. As you can hear, she followed this and pushed this project through for so many years, for decades, before it finally coming to fruition. She never gave up. And, for filmmakers, for producers, directors, you're starting out and you feel discouraged, Catherine is a perfect example of why you shouldn't get discouraged. And if you truly believe in your project, keep hammering those doors. Keep going forward, because who knows? You could be tessering and shortening your own line and getting your film made. I will have more on behindthelensonline.net of speaking with Catherine and her take on various characters, and along with some fun stuff from Storm Reed and scene stealing Derek McCabe, who I have to tell you people, if you see A Wrinkle in Time now, if you miss it in the theater, if you see it now on digital or tomorrow on Blu-ray and DVD, Derek McCabe is your scene stealer. Put him on your radar. We're going to see a lot more of Derek in the years to come. And right now, we're going to switch gears, and I am so thrilled to welcome Adam Sobel to Behind the Lens. Adam, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am so happy to be talking to you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I am thrilled to have you. The Workers' Cup, I have to say, is one of the most intriguing documentaries I think I have ever seen. The subject matter, it just came out of the blue, as far as I'm concerned. This is not really what you think of somebody sitting down and conceptualizing and doing it for a documentary. Now I know that all of your work in the years that you've spent in the Middle East doing television and production and journalism, I'm sure that influenced and is what opened the door for you to tell this story revolving around the preparations for the Qatar World Cup 2022. And for those in America, when you watch the documentary, they're talking football, but it's actually soccer to Americans, football to the rest of the world. Let's get that straightened out right now. So, tell the audience, tell the listeners just what the Workers' Cup is. I mean, I think it's fascinating, and I think on the one hand, it's a really great thing. But on the other hand, you see what lies beneath that, and it contrasts it. So tell everybody what the Workers' Cup is and how you got the idea to tell this story.
Sure. Well, the Workers' Cup is a soccer tournament in Qatar, which, as you mentioned, is hosting the 2022 World Cup, which is a soccer tournament. So the rest of the world might call it a football tournament. We here call it a soccer tournament. And it is the world's biggest sporting event. It's actually starting in a couple weeks in Russia, the 2018 World Cup, and then 4 years later it'll be in Qatar. I found out about the tournament because I was actually living in Qatar. I lived there for about 5 years. And while I was living there, I was making documentaries and news around the region. And as soon as Qatar won the right to host the World Cup, they came under quite a bit of media scrutiny for their treatment of migrant workers, the people who were actually building the World Cup. One thing that's fascinating about Qatar as a place is that 90% of the population isn't from Qatar. 90% is foreign. And 60% of the total population are these blue-collared migrant workers, people who come from largely the Indian subcontinent. But really, they come from poor places, and they are recruited to come to Qatar and work construction jobs and kind of bolster the service industry there. And they're very vulnerable, and that makes them, very vulnerable to exploitation. From a labor system that kind of doesn't give them a whole lot by way of privileges. So, to make a long story short, I was living there. This soccer tournament got announced. We knew that there was a promotional element that the organizers of the tournament were interested in highlighting, and we've managed to kind of use that as a way of gaining access into the labor camps where the workers live and into the construction sites where they worked, to tell this story in a meaningful way.
Well, there are 1.6 million migrant workers in Qatar. I don't know how many of those have been working on the Khalifa International Stadium and all the surrounding buildings going into preparations for 2022. But how did you then hone in on the Gulf Contracting Company and the workers within there? Out of all the workers there, you really hone in and pick a group, a very diverse group, and you do have what I believe to be quite unfettered access in speaking with them and hanging out with them and going to living quarters and going on the job with them. So I'm curious how you narrowed that scope down to, give you a foothold.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we had made media about this subject, migrant workers building a World Cup. And when I say we, by the way, I mean myself and the two producers of the film, Ramsey Haddad and Rosie Garthwaite. We had made documentaries and news pieces about this already, but we had kind of this is a very sensitive topic in Qatar. And it's a country without much by way of media freedoms. So we'd have to work undercover. We'd have to hide people's identity. And ultimately, we'd have this rule where you could only spend 8 minutes in a labor camp and then you had to leave because that's when the authorities could show up. And so what can you really learn about these lives in 8 minutes? You can ask them, do you have their passport? You can ask them how many bathrooms they have, what kind of living conditions are. But you're really approaching the story on your terms. You're not approaching on their terms. So access was the key component to telling this story in a way that we thought was more appropriate and kind of was able to celebrate them. We focused on GCC, the Gulf Contracting Company, as you mentioned. I think it was, partially by luck, to be honest. Partially, I don't know. I mean, I was looking for a team that was diverse. As you mentioned, they have their soccer team that was playing in this tournament represents several different nationalities, which I thought was really interesting and an important component to highlight for a film about migrant workers in the Gulf because they really do come from many, many places. And so I didn't want to make a film that was just about Nepalis or just about Indians, which kind of make up the biggest percentage of workers in Qatar, but rather I thought it was more important to show that this is kind of more of a global issue. So that was one thing that attracted me to their team, and then the second thing that attracted me to them was just that they had this great energy and enthusiasm and zeal, and they loved the game of soccer, and they were really committed to the tournament, and so that as a storyteller was really compelling, and the characters also were surprising. You know, Kenneth, who's one of the main characters in the film, when we met him, we found out that he was this, you know, he thought he was coming to Qatar to become a professional soccer player. This is what his recruiting agent had told him, and then he arrived and instead was given a hard hat and a pair of overalls and said, "Hey, go to work."
And didn't he pay his recruiting agent?
He did, yeah.
That's what,
and that's
yeah.
a really common practice. Yeah, it's actually, you know, it's the labor regulations now state that you're not supposed to pay recruiters, but it remains a very common practice in the countries of origin. Kenneth was from Ghana, and you know, they just that's what recruiting agents said. Is they say, you know, you have to give me $1,500 in order to go there, and people are in such a vulnerable position. They feel so desperate for work that they're willing to do it.
Wow. Well, you know, something that is so striking about this documentary, your visuals. This is a visual beauty, and but it gives. I mean, it's gorgeous. You've got the sleek stainless steel high rises, you know, that have been built on the backs of these migrant workers. But everything with your cinematography, it's bright, it's vivid. The light is very bright. Everything, it's gleaming. So you set up this great contrast, this wonderful juxtaposition between the migrant workers and what's going on in that respect, and what is visible, what the world sees the country as being, and the visual beauty alone. I mean, you could just watch this documentary all day long, just looking at your visuals. They're that stunning. But then when you dig and you actually pay attention to the story you're telling, it really opens up the mind with great food for thought about what exactly is happening. And in a sense, it's a form of slavery.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we tried to approach the story with great nuance. And that's because, again, we lived there. Myself and the producers, the three of us lived there. We lived there for many years. And so we care about the slaves. We care about improving society for the better. And, you know, most people that I knew in Qatar wanted to see something change. They just didn't feel empowered to change it. So that meant that we had to go about telling the story in a way that is sensitive. And so a lot of the criticisms, you know, come from the juxtaposition, as you mentioned. Qatar is a place of great contrast. You know, the segregation, the inequity is extreme. And so we had to find a way to highlight that, not just narratively, but to highlight it visually and contextually. So that's kind of why the visuals go in the direction that it goes in. And then as to, you know, your point about slavery, I think, you know, even within the film, you see some characters that do label the situation as slavery.
Yeah.
You see some other characters who kind of recoil at that term when it's first mentioned. Out of sensitivity to some of those characters, I never will call it that, because some characters in the film really do not appreciate that term.
Right.
But I think that we try to tell the film in a way that kind of allows the audience to make that judgment for themselves. So yeah, it's a situation, you know, where no matter what you label it, certainly you have you know, people who have the capital, people who have the power, are in a position of kind of you know, controlling people who don't.
Well, I'm curious, Adam, logistically, what length of time did you shoot over, and how much footage did you have to cull through to edit? Or did you pretty much have your through line in mind already and you were editing as you were going?
No. So, I mean, you know, even though we kind of won over the access to make this film, because we had lived in the country, we were trusted, we were respected as journalists. So we were given access to this. We still thought that we were going to be shut down every single day that we showed up to shoot. So, you know, I never knew that I was making a feature film until about halfway through it. You know, when after we set out, we started making the film, and we thought, oh, this will be like maybe a nice little 3-minute film, but somebody's going to shut us down. And then we just kept showing up to the camps, and they kept letting us in. And I thought, well, this will be like a nice little 10-minute film, but somebody's going to shut us down, surely. And then we just kept showing up day after day, week after week, and sure enough, nobody shut us down. And we ended up filming it for about a year. But it wasn't until, 4 or 5 months into it that I thought, oh my God, I'm going to actually be able to make a feature film out of this. Up until that point, we thought, at some point, somebody's going to say, hey guys, that's enough. We know we told you have access, but now we thought better of it, and that's enough. But I think that, that we just we were fortunate that we lived in the country. That meant that we could keep showing up. We weren't parachuting into the place. And eventually, after enough, cups of sugary tea, which got, I don't know how many cups of tea we had to drink to make this film with different people. But, you just keep showing up, you keep drinking tea with people. And after a while, they kind of forget about you and you become wallpaper and you just get to do what you want to do. So, we always knew that the soccer tournament itself was going to be the component that made this more accessible and really made it more narratively driven, and also kind of opened people up to the story so that they didn't just think of workers as a resource or as a victim, but rather they saw them as people who were striving towards something, as people who were alive. And so that was the narrative through line, but I didn't know that it was going to be a feature-length film until much, much longer into the process.
Well, I'm so glad it ended up being a feature-length film.
Me too.
Yeah, and I have to say, watching all of these men participating in, playing soccer and leading up to the Workers' Cup with all the eliminations and the joy and exuberance. They are passionate about the sport. They truly love it. And you look at some of them and you think, they don't mind doing the labor. They don't mind doing anything when they get to feel like this. And
yeah, absolutely. I think that sport does have. Well, the Workers' Cup tournament was being organized in some of the same tournaments that are going to host the World Cup in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And so there really was like a fantasy element to the games for the guys.
Yeah.
And for the workers, their daily life is so mundane. It's just this daily grind. They're kind of caught in this constant loop of showing up to their job site and then going back to their labor camp and sleeping and then going back to the job site. It's their life really is just boiled down to kind of mundane work.
Mm-hmm.
And this tournament was a chance to escape that, to break the routine and really escape. And that's why you see them so alive. And again, that's kind of why contrast became such an important theme in the film, to show that, to show how they're kind of living, but then also how they're kind of living in this psychological duress when they're not on the field.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, Adam, we are out of time. I would love to talk to you more about this, but I know the Workers' Cup, it's out in limited release this Friday, June 8th, and then expands wider after
yes.
that. So, this is something people, if you want something that's different, something that is engaging and interesting and will open your mind up and show you parts of the world and aspects of cultures that we are unfamiliar with. Absolutely fabulous job. And I think everybody should see it.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. I think so too. But yeah, absolutely. I think the film, especially for people who are interested in the World Cup, this shows you, it takes you behind the scenes of the world's biggest sporting event, and shows it to you in a way that you perhaps haven't thought of before.
And I got news for you. I know so many guys that are just so into the World Cup, their life revolves around it when it comes cup time. I guarantee you they will all be chomping at the bit to see this. And Phil Barrett, I know if you're listening, I know this includes you and your buddies. So, yes. Adam, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back on the show again. This has been a joy.
I would love to. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Debbie. I really appreciate you having me.
So get back to work and make some more films for me.
I'm going to do that just now.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. Bye-bye.
Right, take care. Bye-bye.
And that was Adam Sobel, director of the Workers' Cup. And now I'm so excited because he's here. David Palomaro is with us. Are you there?
Hello?
Are you there, David?
Hello?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. I just have to pre-apologize. Sometimes I don't get the best reception, so hopefully you can hear me good. And, I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm so thrilled to have you, and I am so thrilled that we are talking about this fabulous, fabulous narrative. Oh my God, it is delicious, it is decadent, it is divine. I am in love with this film, David. Murder Made Easy.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that means a lot to me. Yeah, I know you were a supporter of my documentary a few years ago, so I was eager to send it over to you. And yeah, I've always been a fan of thrillers and Hitchcock films and things like that. So I wanted to do something like that of my own. So I'm really glad you like it.
I mean, this is a big leap from doing, a documentary and Heaven There Is No Beer to this blend, kind of, you get the Hitchcockian and Agatha Christie blend. I mean, that's a big leap. That's a big stretch. For anybody.
Yeah, well, it's kind of no, that's interesting because I went to film school, and for me, storytelling is just storytelling, and my documentary in Heaven There Is No Beer I made because I was part of a music scene that I was really passionate about. I'm also a musician, and I just felt like someone needed to document it. But, I did do a combination of documentaries and narrative films when I was at film school, and I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. In fact, Rope is one of my favorite films of all time. And, yeah, I always wanted to make something like that. I co-wrote a horror script called The House Sitter with my friend Suju Vijayan, and who's also a really good filmmaker. And the problem with that project was that we couldn't get any funding for it because it needed a real budget, a sizable budget. So out of that came Murder Made Easy because I thought, well, what if I could do like a Rope type, one location murder mystery? And so that's how it came about. So, yeah. I
mean, you do it one location murder mystery. You've got 7 characters, 7 actors. That's it. Your structure, the story structure is basically, it's very straightforward. However, within that structure, Tim Davis, your dialogue, I got to tell you, the dialogue in here, some of it takes on this great theatricality. So at moments it feels like, and with the performances then buttressing that, especially Christopher Soren Kelly. Oh my God! Just envision Snidely Whiplash without the stash. He plays this, and you really feel it feels very theatrical at moments, and it really adds so much. It's fabulous.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was intentional. The films that that influenced us the most were Rope, which was based on a play and became a Hitchcock film. Sleuth, with the original Sleuth with Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier, which was a play. You mean before it was a movie, and Death Trap, which with Christopher Reeve and Michael Caine again. And I believe that was a play also. So the theatricality of it was definitely intentional. And we tried really hard. Tim and I tried really hard to infuse like a dark humor into the script. And that was much trickier than we anticipated because those other projects, those other films also have that sort of dark humor. We wanted that. We wanted to, put that in there. So I'm glad it works, and I'm glad you appreciate it because it was kind of tough. I mean, Murder Made Easy could be a play. We kind of did it backwards. We made a film that out of something that actually could be a play, and so maybe one day I'll try it as a play. I don't know.
I got news for you. I think it would be incredible as a play because of the way you have structured it and the performances. As I said, Christopher really sets the tone with the performance, as does Edmund Lipinski, who plays Marcus, one of our dinner guests. The two of them are extremely theatrical in what they're putting forward, and you get some humor inherent with that. But, also helping everything, you really have some great long takes. You're not doing a lot of you're not doing a lot of short, rapid fire cuts. Yes, in the initial opening moments of the film, you're editing there, it is rapier. It's slice and dice, which, it plays as a double entendre for a murder film, a murder mystery. But then once we get into the characters and the dinner and each of the guests coming for dinner, you have some nice extended takes that I really found appealing.
Yeah, that was intentional. It was also influenced by Rope, because Rope is famously one of the first films where they had, it was only six actual shots that were 10 minutes each, something like that. That's as big as the magazines could hold at that time. The 35 millimeter film, they could only hold 10 minutes of film. And so I've always wanted to make a movie like that, but also it plays into the theatricality that you're talking about, because Murder Made Easy is very, very much like a play, so I wanted the scene to play out in real time, and that helped with that as well. And I was going to say, as far as Christopher goes, I met the two lead actors, Christopher Thorne Kelly and Jessica Graham, at Dances with Films, that film festival. A couple years ago. I saw Christopher directed and starred in a short called Tasher, I believe is how it's pronounced. And the next year, they were both in a movie called Monkeys. And I was kind of blown away by their just how good they were. And so I approached them and said, "Hey, would you want to do a film with me?" And we sent them the script, and they were like, "Sure, let's do it." So I feel very lucky and the whole cast was great. I feel very lucky that we found everybody, and they wanted to do this crazy project.
Well, I got to tell you, Jessica, it's like I did a double take, because one look at her and she looks like a young Laura Flynn Boyle.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
With the jet black hair that she's got. And that's something else that you did. And I love the attention to detail that you have in Murder Made Easy. Your use of color in particular. Red is Joan is the only person, Jessica's character Joan is the only person that wears red. And then you've got red and white wine. And of course, the person drinking red wine is Joan. And then for a couple instances of blood, there is no other use of red. And I found that particularly striking. And in some respects, it fuels clues as to what's unfolding as the film progresses.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. We didn't have a big budget for the movie, but I knew I wanted a certain look for each characters, and I actually wanted more color in the film. But because of time and everything, we didn't have really time and a big enough crew to do a lot of that kind of stuff. So where we did use it, I'm glad it's effective. But Jessica and Chris actually helped me, they've done other narrative films before, and they're like, well, you should really think about what each character looks like and the table settings and all that kind of detail. And a lot of stuff that I initially didn't really think about because I was concerned with so many other things. And then at some point before we started shooting, I really honed in on those details, and I thought that was a very, very useful advice, to think about those kinds of things. And I want to also give a shout out to our cinematographer, Sherry Koch.
Oh, Sherry's work it's wonderful. Her work is wonderful,
yeah,
David.
And she took on this project with not a full camera crew. She didn't have an assistant camera operator, which we'd normally have, and we didn't have the budget to do Steadicam and all that kind of stuff. So her and I had to sit down and figure out how we were going to technically pull off these long takes with a lower budget, and I think she did an amazing job. So she's fantastic, and I can't wait to work with her again. And she never said, "Oh, that's crazy, we can't do that." She was like, "Okay, let's figure it out," and we did. So we were lucky to have her. She's great.
Well, something that you mentioned is, shooting food. I have to say, the overhead shots of the plating of the food and the way the food was plated, I mean, that added its own level of humor, especially since some of the dialogue is talking about, oh, how are those new potatoes? Where you don't see the people, you just see the food. And you may cut back, briefly to them, eating something. But it's those overhead shots of the food, be it the sirloin steak and potatoes. And I have to let everybody know, they do beautiful inset menu cards for each one of the dinner scenes. That just cracked me up, David, as I'm watching, and we have, first course, second course,
Yeah.
vegan salad made by Cricket, of course.
Dessert
becomes just desserts. It just very, very clever.
Well, I think the menu we shot the whole film in rehearsal with an iPhone, and then I cut it together just so we had like a little visual storyboard. I think the menu stuff came at that point, but the overhead shots of the food was always an idea I had to kind of divide up each of the different meals. And so working with food is very difficult because when you're eating food in the film and then you have to reset to do another take, you have to reset all the food and all the wine and all the drinks, and I didn't really understand that at first. So I have to give another shout out to my friend Jenny Robinson, who came aboard as our food stylist, and the actual in-film meals were done very last minute. Like I was so constant. I was so worried about everything else, and so I realized a couple days beforehand, I don't really have this food that we're actually going to see on film. And I was kind of in a panic, and I called my friend Jenny, who's a great cook, and I said, I'm doing this film. I need 4 different meals. And she's like, calm down. Write down everything you want. Write down what the meals are. Send me photos of the ideas you have and the ingredients if you have it, and I'll cook it up. And she did. She was up till 6 a.m. the night before we were shooting, making all these meals, and gave us these instructions on how to like reheat it. And like she really saved my butt on that, because I didn't really understand that. Just like actors, if you're going to feature food like that, they're like an actor in a way. Like you have to see them, and it has to look good. You can't just go and buy something in a store really fast. And you also have to be concerned about continuity when people are eating, like I said, and you have to reset to do another take. You go, oh man, wait, the glass was half full, and now we have to. And it actually gets kind of complicated if you're not paying attention. So that was another learning experience. But thankfully, I mean, my friend Jenny, a lot of people really helped me out with this movie, and she was one of them, and I'm very grateful for that. So the food looks good, thanks to her.
Oh, the food looks fabulous. But I'm very curious.
And it was good, by the way. We ate it. Me and Jessica ate that food during, because we had 4 different meals, and once we were done shooting one meal, we had leftover roast or leftover this, and her and I would eat it for lunch, and it was actually really good. And the food was excellent.
Well, see, and it cuts down on craft services, which you didn't have a budget for.
We had craft service, but yes, it did mean that for those couple of days or whatever, I didn't have to spend a meal for me or Jessica or whatever. But yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it was. And it's all this detailed stuff. It's very much a learning process, because initially I thought, it's just 6 people or whatever in a room talking, and then you don't realize when you're dealing with food or you're dealing with long takes and you have to reset everything. All that stuff comes into play, and it was definitely a learning process for me. But I had a really great cast and crew, and no matter how nuts it got or crazy, there was one scene with the first character of Marcus, who played by Edmund Lipinski, who you mentioned you really liked, and we had a big long take of him. He enters, he sits on the couch, they talk for a while, and we did that take. We did it like 22 times, because every time we shot it, there was noise outside, or someone dropped a line, or someone forgot a line, and it was really hot in there because we couldn't have the AC central air on, because that was causing noise for the sound guy. And we just kept not getting the take, and it got to be like 22 takes or something. Finally, we got one good one, and I was like, okay, let's just move on. We got one, and the whole cast and crew said, no, can we do one more? We only got one good one, and I was really blown away by that, because I thought they all wanted to kill me after doing it 22 times or something, But that's the kind of crew I had and the cast I had. They were very supportive, and I felt like my first time narrative film, it was really smart to get really talented people around you to help you,
So I'm curious, because you're mentioning, learning this, learning that. So what was the overall learning curve like for you as you made the jump from documentary into narrative? What were all of those things?
The documentary was a little bit different in that, like, I shot all of it,
right,
and I did my own sound, and I did most of the editing myself. I did have some help from my other friends who are editors at the end when I really just needed to get it done. And the narrative, Murder Made Easy was completely different in every way you can imagine. It's so much more work up front, and you have to figure out how to cast a film. How do I cast a film? Well, I have my 2 lead actors, and Jessica came on board as one of our producers. She's like, let me help you with the casting process. Here's what you can do. Here's a facility we can use. I know a few actors already that might be good for the roles, one of which was Daniel, who plays Damien, the filmmaker in the movie. So she was really helpful for me, not just in the pre-production phase of it, but also during production. She sort of acted as our on-set AD, keeping things moving, keeping the schedule going. And everything was a learning curve. I mean, I did go to film school, and I did do some films, and I was a production assistant when I first moved to Los Angeles, so I had a little bit of a feel for what it's like to be on a set, but nothing like actually doing your own film. I would say the whole thing was a learning curve, to be honest with you. And I hope that I can take that knowledge and everything I learned from Murder Made Easy and then apply it to the next movie. But it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was definitely pretty hard. But like I said, I had really talented folks behind me, and that made all the difference in the world.
What would you say was the most important thing that you learned on this shoot for Murder Made Easy that will inform you now as you go forward into other projects?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say that as a director, you're the leader of the film, and everything sort of comes from the top down from you. And I feel like, you have to be decisive and you have to lead by example. And I think you sort of have to believe in what you're doing. There were a few times I think we were shooting and I wanted to do certain things and I didn't do them. I'm like, oh, I don't know if we can do that. And I look back now and I'm like, it was my film. I think maybe I should have suggested we did this or that. And I think just working with people, learning how to work with your actors, learning how to get the best out of them, learning how to work with your crew and, making them motivated and keeping them interested in what's happening. I think those are the biggest things I think that I learned. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're just maybe you're somebody that's just pointing to things and telling people what to do, but I think I kind of learned there's a lot more to it than that. And I think I was lucky that I had a really good cast and crew, and they're really talented. No matter what was happening, they just believed in the project and they wanted to push forward no matter what. And so that's another thing I learned. Hire really great people, and they'll lift you up. They'll make you look good. You know what I mean? So yeah.
I'm curious because of the lengthy takes, because of some long, extended moments of dialogue. Particularly like with Edmund's character of Marcus. He has, it goes into almost a monologue at one point there, since he likes to pontificate so much. I'm curious, how strictly did you adhere to the script as written, or did you end up with a lot of room for ad-libbing and for improvisation?
Actually, there was very little improvisation. I told the actors it's going to be very much like a play, so they should memorize their parts and like they would preparing for a play. Mm-hmm. And then when we did shoot the rehearsal with the iPhone, they tried to stick to the script. There's a little bit of ad lib that's in the film with Damien's character, or played by Daniel Ahern. Mm-hmm. When I was looking through all the takes, I kind of found, oh right, we kind of ad libbed a little bit thing, and it was kind of funny, so I left it in there. But very little ad-libbing because we approached it like a play, and the actors approached it that way. As I told them, it's like memorize the lines as if you were, performing this 3 or 4 nights a week, at a community theater or something like that, because we have to do these long takes. So, and they were great. All the actors were up for it, and they all did a tremendous job. Actually, it's interesting. Eddie, who you like, he came in last minute because the actor we actually cast to play Marcus, he got pneumonia the day before he was supposed to shoot. And he called me up, and he was really ill, and he said, I think I can still do it, but we didn't have the schedule or the budget to reschedule him. We had to keep going. And Jessica was the one that's like, look, we have to just keep going. You have to recast him. So Eddie was our second choice, and I called him that night. I said, our actor dropped out. He's sick. Unfortunately, he can't do it. Can you do it? And Eddie was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And he came in, and he did an amazing job. So that's not easy to do, because he didn't know that he was going to do the role, and he had to learn all that dialogue pretty much last minute, and I think he did a great job.
He did an amazing job, let me tell you. I would be remiss to not ask you, David, about your music, Sean Spillane's music, because you do have music, not a lot, but what you have, some of it takes on almost a whimsical tone at moments while being dark. So I'm very curious about the music that you do have and what what you and Sean, your conversations were like to come up with the musical complement.
Yeah, that's another great question. A big learning thing is what kind of music are you going to have for your film? What kind of tone do you want to set? So Sean's a guy I knew from the music scene I was part of, which my documentary was about, and he started doing music for horror films. So I called him up and was like, "Hey, I got this narrative thing. Do you want to do it?" And he's like, "Sure." And I was kind of surprised. He was a big fan of my documentary, so he's willing to come over and do it. So the first time he was one of the first people I showed the film to. And as soon as he saw the film, he said to me, "What tone do you want?" And I was like, "I don't really know. What do you mean?" And so we had to figure that out. Is this a drama? Is it a comedy? Is it a dark comedy? And through having conversations with him and him shaping the music, we figured out that tone, that it's sort of a blend of comedy and drama with even a little bit of horror thrown in there. And for him, he hadn't really done a soundtrack or composed music for a film that was mostly orchestral, so it was really, and some jazz stuff, so he really loved that challenge. And his music definitely, without a doubt, helps set the tone of the movie. And I think that's another thing I learned about making this film is music does that. It seems obvious, but it really does help set the mood of what your film is. And so we had to figure that out. And he was great to work with, and he's been supportive of this project from the very, very beginning.
No, I mean,
and lucky to have a guy like Sean.
Yeah, no, I just love the music, and I was really impressed by the type of music and the tone that it did set. Knowing what you came out of, knowing where you came from with your music background, with In Heaven There Is No Beer, and to see that and to hear, the tonal balance here, the auditory tonal bandwidth. I was really, really pleased with that, and it was just the icing on the cake.
I say, it wasn't something that just came in the first version. Even with when Sean would shoot me some tracks, he's like, "Hey, I think this piece might work for this section." And I put it in there, and I'm like, "It doesn't quite work." And so there was a lot of back and forth, and there was a lot of it was hard. It's like the equivalent to when Heaven There Is No Beer is about rock bands. If I just used the rock band's music, all these different bands had music to put it in the film. It seemed obvious. For a narrative film, what I kind of learned is you have a blank page, and you've got a dialogue-heavy movie. And when do you have music? When do you not have music? Do you let them talk? Do you not let them talk? It's like having a blank page when you're trying to write a novel to fill in all those blanks with music. And it took quite a long time to figure that out, where we're going to have music, where we're not going to have music. What kind of music are we going to have at this stage? What are we trying to say with the music? And again, that's definitely another thing that I learned a lot about. And Sean was great. Having someone who composed feature-length movies before was an invaluable tool because it seems like every movie he does, he has to figure that out, what kind of music is going to work and stuff like that. But he had been through the process before, so he kind of guided me through how we were going to do this, So that, again, I just feel very lucky I had talented folks that helped me with this movie. Very, very lucky.
So now, before we're out of time here, where can people see Murder Made Easy?
So we are having our West Coast premiere at the Dances with Film Festival, and we are screening June 14th, which is a Thursday at 9:30 p.m. at the Chinese Theaters in Hollywood. And we are super, super excited about it. We got into a couple other festivals, but this is our West Coast premiere, and obviously we're based in L.A. We shot it here in L.A., and we just couldn't be more thrilled that we are a part of that festival. It's a great festival. Again, I met my two lead actors at Dances with Films a couple of years ago, so it feels like we're coming home, and we're just really thrilled. And I'm really grateful that you watched the movie and that you liked it, and you've always been a great supporter of my work, and I just can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, my pleasure. You also know if it sucked, I would have told you.
Well, that's kind of my attitude I have with these projects I do. I told people when I would send them the script, to even the horror script that we have, which we haven't done yet, or the Murder Made Easy, I send it to Jessica or Chris, the actors, and I'd say, look, I appreciate the honesty. If you think this is not good or you don't want to do it, let me know. The last thing I want to do is work with people who aren't enjoying what they're doing. They don't believe in what they're doing, and so I do appreciate that honesty. I feel like I don't know. I feel like that probably makes you a better filmmaker if you're able to kind of step back and and look at what you've done and try to. I'm not one of those people that is really arrogant and like thinks I know everything. I think that I'm one of those people that's kind of amazed that I actually pulled something off, and I'm always learning. You know what I mean? So I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, you definitely pulled something off here, David. And unfortunately, we're out of time for the show, so I have to say goodbye to you. But I'm going to try and make it there on the 14th to see you for the West Coast premiere. I don't know if
That would be great.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to because I have a 7 o'clock screening elsewhere in Beverly Hills, but I'm going to try and make it over. But I can't recommend it highly enough. Are you just having one showing at Dances with Films, or are you going to get an encore?
Right now, we just have one showing. I mean, if we're able to sell out the one show, they would add another one. But yeah, right now it's just that one screening. But I appreciate you trying to make it over there. I know it's not that's kind of tough coming all the way from the west side. But yeah, thank you for having me on your show, and thank you for always being supportive of my work. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Now get back to work and make me another film.
I'll get right on that.
Thank you so much, David, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. And that was David Palamaro, director, co-editor, and story conceiver of Murder Made Easy. It is decadent, it is delicious, it is divine. It is at Dances with Films, June 14th at 9:30 at the Chinese Theater Complex in Hollywood. See it, see it, see it. That is all the time we have today. We'll be back next week. We're already booked up into July now with guests, so we've got lots of people on hand coming, calling in and coming in studio for the rest of June and into July. So that's it for today. I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.